And I came back with it, and she took one look at it and she started laughing. She's like, "You're the only one that can write this book." She's like, "Your tone, your voice."
Hello and welcome to episode 64 of Rockstar CMO FM. The M is for marketing and the F is for, well, you decide. As you're probably wondering, does the world need another effing marketing podcast? I'm your host, Ian Truscott, and this podcast serves as my excuse to chat with marketing friends old and new that I've met through my 20-year B2B marketing career, and hopefully share some marketing street knowledge that will bring out the Rockstar CMO in you. Come say hello at Rockstar CMO on Twitter and LinkedIn, and thank you to those that have. I've had some lovely feedback this week. This episode was recorded on Friday the 28th of May. I hope you've had a good week and you are well, safe and staying as sane as you feel you need to be. A slightly longer episode this week as I got a bit carried away with our guests. It's actually my birthday as I edit this, so I hope you'll indulge me. Julie Ogilvie, former CS Decisions Forrester Research Director, returns to talk about creating categories. I have a wonderful conversation I think you'll enjoy with Christina Villar about her book Sway, Implement the Grit Marketing Method to Gain Influence and Drive Corporate Strategy. And of course, I will round off the week with my friend and content marketing guru, Robert Rose, for a chat and a cocktail. Right, let's get started, shall we? On to our first segment. You may remember Julie Ogilvie from episode 58. She is a former VP Principal Analyst for Forrester Research and has a fabulous marketing career before that. Delighted that Julie has agreed to join us for the next few weeks, sharing some of her advice on marketing topics that you could describe as greatest hits or maybe pet peeves. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Welcome, Julie, back to Rockstar CMO FM. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me back.
Oh, you're very welcome. I think that we're going to call this segment Julie Ogilvie's Greatest Hits, and we're going to go through some of the things that you've talked about in your excellent career as a Serious Decisions and Forrester Research Director, correct?
Correct.
And all the things that you've seen and some of the things we've discussed off air after you appeared on the show before, which I'm very grateful for, and I'll point people to when you first appeared. So looking at my notes, the first up of Julie Ogilvie's greatest hits is We're Creating a Category, which
We're creating a category, yes.
Yes.
This should be called, pet peeves, or I don't know if it's greatest hits, but that is something I would hear clients say. And I had also, my career prior to being at Serious Decisions and Forrester was in the technology world. And so that's always, sort of a favorite in technology to say, we are going to create a category. And in almost all cases, that happens when, product managers and product marketers realize that their product doesn't fit any category, right? It's got some serious deficiencies or idiosyncrasies. And, this can happen for a lot of reasons. Sometimes, product development is more driven by the specific needs of a customer, or there could be mergers and acquisitions, but companies end up with this weird assembly of features that don't fit any definition. So they say, well, we are our own category. That's another, a variation on it, not just we're creating a category. We're our own category. We are a category, And so I'd have to explain, well, you can't be a category unless there are other companies in it. And so that's a big thing. A lot of people say, well, category, we are the category. And that's not what it is. It kind of goes back to what is a category. A category is like a mental picture in the minds of customers and influencers about, a certain type of product that exists in the world. And it's useful to define different types of categories. And you can say you're in or you're out of a category. But saying we're going to create our own category doesn't make it so.
No, absolutely. And but sometimes I think, and I don't know whether this is a bit of a cheeky question, but aren't sometimes analysts quite complicit in this category creation business? Because I know in the category that I've spent most of my career in, content management, nobody calls it content management before. There is a plethora of terms some of which I think vendors have invented, and some of them have been invented by the analysts. I remember 20 years ago, an analyst inventing the term enterprise content management, and all of a sudden everybody's pivoting and buying document management systems and stuff like that. So what do you think that also analysts play the role there?
Absolutely. In fact, in B2B, analysts play an important role, and one of them is actually defining the categories, and it cannot be escaped that the way that people think about categories is very often what analysts have told them. And I won't name any particular analyst firm, but there's one that always comes to mind. They have a certain sort of magical construct that they use that really simply defines what these categories are often in people's minds. And so, it's not impossible to create a new category. As you said, enterprise content management is one. There's smaller segment, but something called information governance. It was created a few years ago, an assembly of different types of functionalities. So it can be done, but it takes a long time, usually takes 18 to 24 months to do. It requires budget because, again, it's not you saying that there's a new category. It's getting other people to say it. So it's getting analysts to say, this is the category. We agree with that definition, and that you're a part of it and you're a leader in it. And then it's getting customers to buy into that and to buy your product. In order to say that you're successful in creating a category, you have to be able to show business results and that you have some traction with customers. And so I think sometimes people drift into that thinking of we'll create a category because they think it's easier, say, than fixing their product, which may not fit today's definition of the category. But if they really think about it and they realize this is really a 2-year proposition to create a category, they might think about it differently.
Yeah. Do you think vendors do that on purpose, or do you think they're just looking for a tagline to describe their product in a different way, but they actually accidentally stumble out of their category and start confusing their buyers?
Yeah, I think sometimes it's by accident, and sometimes, unfortunately, I have to say it's by ego. I think a lot of times these ideas, like we're going to create a category, have come about because there's been some kind of an offsite or some kind of strategic planning session where a bunch of people get in a room and who's the smartest guy in the room, and we're arguing about things. I mean, working in technology, you've been a part of these groups where these arguments that go on are so passionate, and they end up coming out with this sort of convoluted idea. But everybody in the room has agreed to it. So this is what we're going to go to market with. And the disconnect is no one has taken that idea out and talked to customers about it, tested it. And that is typically the road to ruin. So,
So, but I mean, being at the forefront of a category, being there when a category is formed, and that magic moment when something coalesces and comes together is actually quite an important place for a vendor to find themselves, isn't it? I mean, there's I think it's the book Play Bigger that, and if I was better prepared, I'd remember who the authors were, but where they talk about the fact that you need to sort of be within the sort of definition of your category and be that definition is, so there is obviously value in defining category, but you're saying there's investment you have to put in order to do that.
Right. And so, and it's not impossible to create a category, definitely. But again, it's investment, it's commitment to a vision, and understanding that it is a long-term process. And essentially, when you have created this vision for what this category is, it's it really has to be a company-wide dedication to achieving that, because the product needs to be shaped according to that category. Again, you need to have your customers reinforcing that this is a category. You need to have a long-term, usually sort of a courtship with your analysts and experts in the field to convince them that this is indeed a category. You're shaping the way people think, and this is a long-term proposition, but it's absolutely achievable. A lot of times companies just don't stick with it long enough, and they don't understand what it is that they're getting into when they go into this process.
I think that the other thing I've found as well is that there's a uniqueness. Sorry, there's a belief of uniqueness and differentiation within an organization, but actually there's actually a failure of competitive intelligence understanding the market, and that you're not so different as you thought you were, or that your advantages aren't actually category defining. They're just nice to haves on top of a core category. Is that sort of experience that you've seen as well?
Absolutely. And another thing that is sort of counterintuitive is that you will be successful in creating a category when competitors agree that it's a category and define themselves using your language. So a lot of times, again, companies go into this saying, we're unique.
Yes.
There's nobody else like us. Well, that's not a category, right? So there's some kind of internal tension there. But I would agree with you very often. People will have, maybe they have a couple of very good customers who are just, completely, overjoyed with this set of features that you have in your product. But that does not mean that fits a larger market definition.
Yeah. And also I like that when you're saying about, that sort of being overjoyed about the fact that you're redefining this category, and that people don't really see outside the market, and also the fact that we're kind of flying blind a lot of the time when you're inside a vendor. And I have actually, and the competitive thing made me laugh actually when you mentioned that, because I've actually been inside organizations where the competitors started to use the same language as that vendor, and they're going, oh, they're stealing our idea.
Exactly.
And I'm thinking, great, that means that our idea has been validated by the market.
Right. Exactly. You're exactly right. Until you see analysts start to use that language, customers are using the language, and competitors, then you don't really truly have a category. So that's another thing. Like people, if you explain that to them sort of as they're going into this, sometimes they'll sort of say, oh, I see now. Like what they're talking about is not creating a category. They do want to have a unique and powerful position in the market. But maybe they don't want to create a category.
Have you, there's a couple of examples that come to mind that I think have been quite successful. I think Drift did very well with conversational marketing, for example. I don't think we'd really talked about conversational marketing until, Drift was not the first chatbot ever to exist, but they did seem to take the lead in that market and define it. Have you seen examples where you've seen categories being redefined or being led by a vendor through changing what the vision was of that category?
Yeah. So the one that I mentioned before, it's not a huge category, but it's fairly easy to understand. There was, is information governance, which was, this is say, maybe 10 years ago, the idea of information governance was really email archiving, making sure we archive our emails. But because of regulation and so forth, the need to really manage information through its life cycle became it became a bigger concept, and it was driven by circumstances in the market and regulation and changes in technology. And so this category of information governance, it was a fairly small company that sort of drove that category to become something that was, information governance category as covered by analysts, et cetera. Another smaller one that I know from sort of back in the day around early 2000s, something called Enterprise Service Bus. So at the time, a technology for sort of bringing together different sorts of inputs were coming from, different systems. Back in the day, Lotus Software with Groupware. Groupware was something that wasn't really a category that was covered before then. And, we could find some other, we could find other examples, I'm sure, but, these have come about for good reasons. They really do come about because it's something that makes sense for people in the larger context of the market.
Right. So the category's either got to make logical sense and it just sort of coalesces around the idea, or you're in for the long haul of a 24-month program of convincing influencers, partners, competitors even, and analysts that
Right.
this is a thing.
Yeah, partners is another good add to it, because you're right. It is like an ecosystem that will exist around this if it is a true category.
Yeah.
And, even if it does make sense, usually it makes sense in retrospect. At the beginning of that 24 months, nobody thinks that makes sense, right? And there is, it's a process of providing evidence and finding customers who will speak about it and support it. And really, it has to be something that holds together and makes sense in people's minds.
I mean, one of the biggest ones I think we've seen in the in the marketing discipline and practice is content marketing. I was saying my sentence in the wrong order there. Things like that, isn't it? Something like content marketing was, I don't know, 10 years ago you wouldn't have thought of, but now is a discipline because of the commitment of folks like Joe Polizzi and Robert Rose who went on to do the Content Marketing Institute, and then they actually put the hard miles in for a couple of years until we all sort of understood what this thing meant.
Right. And, it's funny. And this was sort of a sticking point with people at Serious Decisions is what has marketing done for all of these years? Creating content.
Yeah.
Right. But there is a difference between creating content and content marketing. Yeah. And you're right. It is something, and it's something that, content marketing is designed to do a specific thing, and people understand it more. But that whole tension of, are we just talking about creating content, or are we talking about content marketing? That's been one of the sort of evolutions of recent years.
Yeah, well, I like as well what you all seem to be intimating there is I think that's the fine balance we need to take. I mean, we do this, as you know, we do this swimming pool thing every week where we chuck things in, we chuck things that are annoying people into the Rockstar CMO swimming pool around marketing, and a lot of stuff around buzzwords and stuff. Some of those things, I think people are trying to create a category over marketing discipline, and it doesn't quite stick, and then it fails, doesn't it? So I think we see categories all over the place, don't we? People are inventing these categories or these new terms, and they don't quite stick.
Well, and that's another thing. People want to use their own branded language. We are XYZ, and as you said, nobody else is allowed to say that. Well, that's not really helpful to you. You have to speak the same language as your audience.
Yeah. That seems like a great place to stop on that topic. So that's the first of Julie Ogilvy's greatest hits or pet peeves. Whereas greatest hits, it's got more of a Rockstar CMO ring to it. So thank you very much. So that's categories. And then will you join me again next week for your next one?
I would be very happy to.
Thank you very much. I'll see you then. Cheers. Thank you, Julie. When Julie suggested this topic, I just laughed, as I've spent all of my career in B2B technology, and I've seen this so often. As you heard, you can find Julie on LinkedIn at chubbycouple.media, and she's Ogilview on Twitter. Our next guest is Christina Del Villar, who is a Silicon Valley marketing executive consultant and author who geeks out on helping companies transform, grow, scale, and leverage technology. With 25 years of experience at Fortune 100 companies and more than 15 startups, Christina has developed go-to-market and marketing strategies for new product launches, acquisitions, and IPOs, particularly for high-growth companies, where she leverages her experience and industry perspective to take them to the next level. Christina's grit marketing method focuses on helping marketing professionals to build smarter programs, be more efficient, grow revenue, and improve overall company performance. And we'll be discussing her book, Sway, Implement the Grit Marketing Method to Gain Influence and Drive Corporate Strategy, which is due out shortly. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Welcome, Christina, to Rockstar CMO FM. How are you?
I am doing excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm very welcome. And for the listeners that don't know you, tell us a little tiny bit about yourself.
Perfect. Yeah. So I am a go-to-market strategist and marketing executive. I've been working in Silicon Valley for the past almost 30 years. Let's just say 30-ish years, mostly with B2B companies and probably with about 20 different startups in some capacity, whether it's running their marketing or advising, and that included Elon Musk's first company. So I learned a lot from that. Yeah, Zip2 was a long time ago, and then the recently IPO'd Bill.com. And then the other, I've really focused a lot on Fortune 500 companies as well, just because I'm so focused on B2B. So I've worked for companies like Oracle and Wells Fargo. But yeah, I'm just excited to be here and talk about some of my experience and hopefully help some folks out.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. And as this is a marketing show, and we're trying to encourage rockstar CMOs of the future. And what inspired you to get into marketing?
Yeah, I kind of joke about it, but honestly, I actually wanted to be a fighter pilot when I was younger, and women just we weren't allowed at that time. So, part of it was just the combination of planning and strategy and nimble decision making and some of that combat that you see. It was both sort of terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. And since I couldn't be a fighter pilot, I picked the next closest thing, which was a marketing executive in Silicon Valley.
Sounds pretty similar. It's amazing how many people ended up in marketing and had other aspirations. But I think you're the first aspiring fighter pilot I've had on the show.
Yeah, but seriously, it's for me, it is all about strategy, and really trying to figure out how to bring those products to market. And it was interesting because I think when I was working with Elon, it really became clear that there are people like the idea person, right? The people who come up with these crazy ideas, I suppose, but amazing. And then there's the people who strategize on how to get them to market. And again, I realized really early on that I'm not the big idea person. I'm not going to figure out the next big product or solution, but I'm really good at getting them to market.
Yeah, and turning the tech terms into something that other people are going to be able to consume, which is the role of the marketer, isn't it? So.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, translating that technology and that verbiage, and so that it makes sense for the folks you're selling to, for sure.
Yeah, turning that idea into an actual product. So anyway, talking of inspiration and what inspires you to get into marketing, and the reason really I think that you're here, because I've been enjoying your book. Sway, implement the grit marketing method to gain influence and drive corporate strategy. It's quite a long title.
It is quite a lot. It was a much shorter title when I started, and then after several iterations, it got longer and longer. So it's great for SEO, that's for sure.
Well, it's great. I mean, it's inspirational, as I was saying. But carrying on with the topic of inspiration, what inspired you to write it?
Yeah, and thank you. I appreciate you reading the book. It's been a passion of mine for a while. I've been in marketing for 30 years, and one thing that just really became clear is that even though I feel like marketing is the backbone of the company, right? Like we develop the brand, we develop the logo, we own the website, the content, the programs, like everything that helps, again, sort of develop that company, develop the products and bring them to market is marketing. And yet a lot of people don't understand what marketing actually does and what marketing professionals bring to the table, the value they bring. And, for me, it was disheartening. I mean, I've seen it myself and I've seen it in my teams and in other people. And so I really just wanted to figure out a way to help people have more significant impact and really be able to show the value that they really are truly bringing. And so I really wanted to be able to teach marketing professionals that. It's interesting. You had Russ Powell on a couple of episodes ago, and he was talking about how marketers don't understand or aren't able to articulate or communicate their effectiveness and their value, the value add that they bring to the business, and maybe even understanding the responsibility that they have for the overall corporate goals. And so that's really what inspired me to write this book. And it really does. It provides a framework to help people figure out how to do that. So.
Yeah, no, I love it, and just the opening chapter is like a call to arms, isn't it? It's like you seem to have breathed into this book like this sort of empowering perspective of what marketing needs to be getting on with, and not sit back and and worry
Right.
that you're not included in that high level stuff. But go get it. Go
Go
do
get
it.
it. Yeah,
Yeah,
go
yeah,
empower yourself and go get it.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting because when I first started the journey of writing the book, I talked to a ghostwriter because I didn't know how to write a book,
Mm-hmm.
and she talked to me a little bit, and then we had a conversation, and she made me go write something, and I came back with it, and she took one look at it, and she started laughing. She's like, "You're the only one that can write this book." She's like, "Your tone, your voice, like you need
Yeah.
to write this book." So that's what I
Yeah,
did.
no, it really comes across, and and it's really interesting to read the book and then to have the opportunity to chat to the author and really get that true, the
Yes.
voice in my head, of the person that was talking to me in the book, and to actually meet you. But the
Yeah,
book's mainly
excellent.
built around a methodology that you have, which is the grit in the title, right? So
Yeah.
tell us a bit about grit.
Yeah, so I'll kind of explain what the acronym stands for, and then I'll go into a little bit of detail about each of them. So GRIT stands for the G stands for go to market, the R stands for RPM, the I stands for intention, and the T stands for tools and technology. And so when I broke it down again, sort of thinking about the process that marketers need to go through to start sort of owning that go to market strategy in and of itself, um, it really starts with the go to market strategy. It's really critical for marketers to be involved in the development of the strategy. I find oftentimes we're not involved in the strategy at all. If we're often like handed, like a
Yeah,
recipe, like here's a
yeah,
cookbook, go do it, and it's like whoa, what? This doesn't even make sense. This isn't even our
yeah,
target.
yeah,
And so I think it's just really important for marketers to understand that they really should. Have a significant role in the go-to-market strategy if they don't own it, in and of
hmm
itself. And Jeff Clark was on, and he talked about that too. He was talking about, it's just so important for marketers to be involved and understand that is where they should be. And again, if you look at across the entire customer journey, marketing is part of that journey, but product, like how can marketers help with product? How can marketers obviously help with sales and enable them? But even again, in B2B in particular with customer success, how can the marketing team and organization help customer success be successful? Therefore, our customers won't churn, they'll expand and things like that. So that's really what the G stands for.
Particularly now with, most B2B technology services are SaaS, aren't they?
Yeah.
And I had this
Yeah.
conversation, and I love that you've quoted two people that are on the podcast already. And I'm going to quote a third with Darren Granaccia from Hootsuite. And he was saying that, it's important that the marketing and the product keep step, are relevant to the
Yeah.
customer, because they're 1 month or 1 year away from terminating that agreement.
Right. Yeah. I'm in a group of CMOs, and we were talking about this. Like the marketing automation tools are just not keeping up with what we need
Yeah,
to really have a significant impact on our customers. Like we're looking at our customers and how can we help them? And these
yeah,
tools just aren't keeping up with what we need them to do.
yeah,
And it's going to be a problem, pretty
yeah,
soon.
yeah.
So,
So, and we get to that, don't we, when we get to the T, but we're only at R, and I've realized
yeah.
that
Now
so
we're at
what's the
R.
R?
So the R stands for RPM, which means
Hmm.
repeatable, predictable, and measurable.
Hmm.
And this is something I think is really critical. I think marketers really need to think about how they can be more effective.
Yeah.
So instead of creating 20, even more, 100 different programs, like create a couple of really good programs, create a couple of really good pieces and pillar pieces of content,
Hmm.
and figure out how to leverage those in different ways. And so that's really what the RPM is all about. And then obviously you want to measure that. The I stands for intention. And I think this is really critical. And it goes to, I think, a big issue that marketers have. And that is, really understanding, like, again, if you're thinking about the go to market strategy and how it aligns with the customer journey, like be intentional with every single thing you do, every minute of your day,
Hmm.
because otherwise you're spinning your wheels and you're potentially producing programs and content that are meaningless. And it was interesting. I had my team. It was 1 week. I just record every interruption that you have that's not focused on programs that are strategic.
Mm.
And the average they came back with interruptions in 1 week was 200 interruptions.
Wow. Yeah,
And it was
yeah.
everything like, hey, I'm going into a sales call. Can you throw me a slide? Or I need a t-shirt. Or, the CEO's like, hey, I've got this great idea. All of the, which are questionable. But all of these interruptions like really impact your productivity. And if
Yeah.
they're not helping you really, meet that OKR, that KR, the
Yeah.
ultimate objective of the company, you need to stop doing them because
Mm.
it's just a distraction.
It's focus, isn't it? I mean, it's a big thing, isn't it? I mean, I like
Yeah.
intention, I like that, but really that's about focusing, marketing, having that
Yeah,
focus.
absolutely. And it's okay to say no. Like if somebody, runs over and is like, oh, hey, I need this, or, oh,
Yeah.
I need you to create a little logo for me or whatever,
Yeah, yeah,
whatever it
yeah.
is. And so that's what the I stands for. And the T stands for tools and technology, really
Hmm.
all of the different tools and systems that we implement, the workflows that we need to think about, how they're working for us. I
Hmm.
feel it's really important for marketing to own this. Oftentimes it gets handed over to the IT organization, but they're not the ones who are being held accountable for
Yeah.
everything that you're supposed to be measuring or the data. And so we really need to kind of step up and have more say
Hmm.
and ownership of the tools and technology. So that's
Yeah.
that's that's good.
Yeah. Which one would you say is, I'm going to get to another question in a second, but out of those four things, what would you say
Yeah.
is the thing that we as marketers really need to focus the most on? Because,
Yeah.
a lot of the conversation we have on the podcast is about technology and that people overthink about. They spend too much time on technology and they think
Sure.
that that's going to
Yeah.
solve their problems. But I like
Yeah.
which one is it that you think that marketers really should pay attention to?
Yeah, I mean, I think without a doubt, it's the go-to-market strategy. Like we really need to be a viable partnership in developing that, if not own it outright. And so part of what the book talks about is how do you do that? It provides a framework to do what I call building internal influence across that customer journey. I call it the map of influence. And by doing that, you start slowly sort of picking away at areas that you can own or influence. And that's kind of how you get to owning that. Because at the end of the day, we own the revenue target. Like let's face it, we own it, right? We're held responsible, we're held accountable for it. But if we're not the ones who are helping develop that strategy in the first place, it's really hard to sort of connect those dots.
No, I love that. And again, and a topic that comes up a lot is about us marketers being aligned with those goals of the senior executives of
Yeah.
revenue and stuff. So, looking at the time, and I realize I have in no way set aside enough time in this podcast to talk to you. So it's all on me. What's the one thing that you would like readers to take from this book? Aside from
Yeah.
that inspiration that I found in that first,
Yeah,
there.
I think the empowerment is key, like you're saying. It's
Mm,
not, I think a lot of people sit back and wait for somebody to empower them, and you need to
yeah,
empower yourself. But I think that the key thing really is that you can have influence across the entire company, and it doesn't matter what your job level is, what your experience is, what your role is. You really need to sort of just understand that you can have that influence. It's going to help you be more effective. It's going to help you build trust. It's going to help your career trajectory. And so that's really what I want people to think about is, the influence that they can have. And it's really like a marketing campaign. That the book basically is like how to market yourself internally. It's like
yeah.
market the marketer.
Yeah, no, that really came across. And so the tips you would give to marketers is to understand what they're capable of doing and how they can influence an organization, right? And then market that. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So for example, let's just say you're the person who's responsible for webinars.
Mm,
And some people might think, oh, that's just, a webinar that's
yeah,
going on. But, have you noticed, if you're talking to customer success, there are tickets that are coming in and there's something significant that customers are looking for, then can
yeah,
you think about doing a webinar around that? Or can you take that to product and engineering and say, hey, you know what? This is something significant. I know it's on the roadmap. Can you be on our webinar to help people understand?
yeah.
And so there's just little tiny ways, I call them touch points, that we can, influence people. It really has to do with like gaining trust, right? And so you
Hmm.
you have to understand all of the different pieces and components of that customer journey. And kind of empathy is overused right now, but like
Yeah.
have empathy for the engineer, have empathy for
Yeah.
the product person, have empathy for the salesperson, because that's what's going to help you just be better at your job and help them be
Yeah.
better at their
I
job.
love that. Well, the thing with empathy, and I'm just carrying on this. The thing that I found with empathy and trust is most people are talking about building that with their with the market, with their
Right.
audience, right?
Yep. Yep.
And what I like is what you're saying is that you also have to do that at home. You need to,
Yeah.
be a marketer also in the office as well as looking outwards.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. I think that, what as much as I say that, marketing is overlooked and undervalued,
Yeah.
there's a lot of people in the organization are. And I had an experience with the engineers, and I needed the roadmap changed. I needed something reprioritized. And so I went to the head of engineering and, told him like, this is, I put things in context for him, right? Like, this
Yeah.
is what I need. This is why I need it. This is how this is going to help. And I
Yeah.
and I gave him a revenue number. I'm like, if we're able to do this, this is going to increase our revenue. It was like almost by 100 million, and which is amazing, right? And so the interesting thing is he looked at me and he said, nobody has ever related what my team
Mm,
does to the revenue that the company brings
yeah.
in.
Wow.
And I was like, my gosh, yeah, like you build the product that we sell that people use and so just by that, like one, it was like a 5-minute conversation we had, it built trust. He went back to his team and was like, did you know that we can
Yeah.
help
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
revenue? And it just sort of
We
snowballs from
can,
there.
yeah. I mean, we can build the bridges inside organizations like that, and
Yep,
we've
absolutely.
also got our spotlight that we can shine on people. Like I've done that before,
Absolutely.
where you bring people, you spotlight them on the blog or stuff like that, and they just love it.
Yeah.
And I had
Yeah.
a similar experience with the CFO, where I was working with the CFO, and he's like, "Wow, you're the first marketer that's really got into the numbers like this." And if you're interested in what they're interested in, that empathy builds up,
That
and there's nothing wrong with the CMO being chums with the CFO. Let me just tell you
Exactly.
that.
Yeah, right. No question about that. Yeah, and one thing, and I think this is important for the audience. One thing
Yeah.
that I've always done is with my teams. Sometimes they volunteer, sometimes I kind of make it a mandatory thing, but I basically pair them with people in other organizations. So I'll
Hmm.
have my events person have a contact in product, have a contact in engineering, have a contact in sales, have a
Mm,
contact in customer support. And, whether they just go for coffee or they, get on a call
mm.
to discuss what's going on. But it's just a real simple way to start building, again, those
Yeah.
relationships and that empathy. And then if anything ever comes up, these people can say, hey, you know what? I know that might sound like bullshit, but I had lunch with them last week and they know what they're talking about and we need to see if we can help them. So it really does help build, and again, that trust and influence internally, which seems so obvious, right? It's like everything you do externally, you need to start thinking
Yeah.
about inward.
Yeah. And that really came through in the book. And I really like that. So I'm going to say the title of the book again so that people can find it. Implement the grit marketing method to gain influence and drive corporate strategy. It's out now, right? So
It's pre-sale right now.
it's on
So
pre-sale right now. Right.
it's
Right.
coming out August 3rd. You have a special copy, so
Yes, I do, don't I? Thank you. Okay.
exactly.
So I'll include a link to that in the show notes. So I'm going to come to our final question,
Perfect.
which I very much enjoy. We have a regular feature, the Rockstar CMO Swimming Pool, our portal to marketing hell for all the bullshit, snake oil, and overhyped trends of our industry. What would you chuck in there?
Oh, there's a lot I would chuck, but I I would chuck a lot of it out. But I think MQLs and just leads in general.
Lovely.
I'm right. Like seriously, that is
Yeah.
not that and t-shirts. It's like what people think marketers do. It's like, and if we had a t-shirt that said MQL, they'd be like, yeah, that's what you do.
Yeah.
And it's ridiculous. Like marketing does so much more. They bring so much more value.
Hmm.
Not to minimize qualified leads, but again, it's like the one thing like a CEO hears that and they're like, yeah, how many MQLs did you bring in?
Yeah.
And it's like that, what we want to talk about. And this goes to the, go to market strategy and
Yeah.
the alignment of the customer journey. It's like, what's the revenue? Who cares? I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
sure you care, what your
Yeah. Yeah.
ROI is and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But MQLs, we just talk about them too much because it's like what people quote understand when in fact they
Yeah.
don't understand They don't understand them at all.
Well, I think it's like a common language, isn't it? It's the thing we can agree to
Yes.
disagree on and to
Yeah.
debate endlessly about what an
Right.
MQL and what an SQL is.
Oh my
It
God.
blinds
Yeah.
us.
Oh, it does. And let's talk about revenue, right? Like
Yeah.
marketing should be talking about revenue, and everything we're doing should be driving to revenue. And we need to be able to explain that and show that with the results that we have.
Yeah, no, I love that. And MQLs have come up a few times on the show as well. So I'm glad that we get to throw those in the swim pool.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
And finally, if people spin the dial on the interwebs, where are they going to find you, Christina?
They can find me at ChristinaDelVillar.com.
Mm-hmm.
And the book right now, you can go to swaythebook.com. That's easier than typing in, the entire title and subtitle.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, I'll include all your links and the links to the book in the show notes. Thank you very much for your time. I've very much enjoyed our conversation.
So much.
I look forward to staying in touch. Thank you, Christina.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Christina. That was fun. And I genuinely recommend grabbing her book when it comes out. She has a very direct writing style, and the first chapter alone will inspire you to get some marketing shit done. Right. It's that time of the week. It's Friday evening and time to find out where my friend and content marketing guru, Robert Rose, would like to transport us to for a marketing thought and a cocktail in the Rockstar CMO virtual bar. Good evening, Robert. What are you drinking?
Hello and welcome back to the bar. Didn't we? I think we established last week that I have moved in.
Yes, I think, indeed. I've been tweeting about it this week.
I saw that. I saw that. Yeah. Well, tonight we have, and it is a wonderful Friday as we get into the weekend here. And what I've gotten for us tonight is something. I don't know where you stand on this. I don't know that we've talked about it, but I just got my vaccination done.
Oh, yes.
And so, which I'm quite happy about. And so I'm calling it the post-vax. And it's basically a health tonic almost, if you will. It's I mean, of course, let's be serious. It's got tequila in it. So I don't know how healthy it's really going to be, but it's a really fun mix of pineapple juice, apple juice, carrot juice. Yes, really. Turmeric, lemon juice, and just a spot of cinnamon. And if you put all that together with a healthy shot of, and now this is important, a reposado tequila, a lighter tequila, not one of the heavy anejos. You need a really light tasting tequila for this.
Yeah.
It as they say, it'll cure what ails you. So that's tonight's little concoction.
That sounds splendid. And all of that is extremely healthy, I should imagine. And so I'll need to create that with my desktop bar. Let's see what I've got here. So did you put ice in that?
I do indeed. Yes, I did indeed. And the reason for that is it's getting hot here in Southern California. So
yeah, I bet it is. Yeah, we even had some warmth here. So, and then I obviously don't. I have a very light tequila. It's called gin.
Yes, that is the lightest. That is the lightest of the tequilas. Yes,
the
you
lightest
have anejo, reposado, and gin. I think are the three different.
The lightest of the English tequilas.
Of the gin. The lightest of the tequilas.
The English tequila. And then I'm also going to have a health tonic to join you with that, and it's going to be a health cucumber tonic water.
Excellent.
I said this last week, didn't I? The waft of cucumber that comes out of that bottle is marvelous. Let me taste this and see if I feel any better.
Makes the office smell nice, I suspect.
Oh, that's delicious, and I think that definitely would cure whatever ails you. And what did you call that, Robert?
I was calling it just the post-vax, because or the post jab, maybe even.
Post jab, yes. Well, I could. I mean, I don't fancy having the vaccine every week, but I certainly could drink one of those every
yeah,
week.
exactly.
I'm almost there. I've had my first one because they space ours apart by months. So I had my first one months ago, and then I have my second one in a few weeks. So excellent. Then I will get my superpower. I don't know what it's going to be, what my superpower will be, but it's whatever Bill Gates decides, I think.
It is up to Bill Gates, because he does have the chip in your arm now, so he can program that.
Yes.
Pretty readily.
Yes, I'm hoping I'm going to become the paperclip.
Oh, excellent. I think that's a good one. I think. Yeah.
All right, mate. So we're having these wonderful drinks and talking rubbish about vaccines and Bill Gates, and starting our little conspiracy theories. Whereabouts might we be drinking these?
Well, funny enough that you mentioned conspiracy theories, because we'll go to one of the places in the U.S. here where they are, they're the source of many of them. Mm-hmm. There is a place in Montana, which I'm going to guess that you've not been to.
No.
It is not one of the more common destinations, but there is a common destination in Montana called Glacier National Park, and it is spectacular. It is what you think of when you think of the old American cowboy West, and it is absolutely a beautiful place in the world. And there is a 5-star hotel, because let's be really, really serious here. I never go camping. If I'm going to go anywhere in the world, there better be a 5-star hotel. Yeah. So there is a 5-star hotel, and it's called the Ranch at Rock Creek. It's not in Glacier National Park. It's just outside of it, but it's, let's call it Glacier National Park adjacent. And it's a beautiful place where we can sit, overlook the mountains, the lakes, maybe ride on horseback, and just feel like we're, getting healthy again and ready to re-enter the world. And it's just a place to escape, and would be a great place for us to get away.
Is that the big country?
Yes, they call that Big Sky Country, but that's Wyoming. But it's, Wyoming and Montana are just next to each other. So, yes, but they call that Big Sky Country, where you can, it's, Glacier National Park is actually up in the mountains, right? So it's where all it's reasonably named because it was where all the glaciers sort of cut through that part of the world. And so when they cut through, they created deep, deep valleys, which created mountains on either side of them. So there's these string of lakes that are all glacier lakes. And then, of course, it's a beautiful mountains and hillsides around that. It's absolutely beautiful.
Sounds fabulous. And I think that we're creating a little drinking travel show here. I mean, you need to talk about marketing when you're discussing such beautiful places.
Yeah. I have not been. The last time I was there, I was a kid. And so I have not been since in many, many years. So it's somewhere I really want to get back to.
Sounds fantastic. So what would we be discussing once we've got over the Big Sky?
Well, first of all, we probably wouldn't talk about anything regarding marketing. let's just face that reality for a moment, and then take a beat and go, all right, now let's talk about marketing. So, so what's on my mind and would love to chat about is something that I had an experience with a couple of weeks ago. Where I literally had someone, a marketing VP, say to me, "We don't have time for strategic content." And you hear that sentence and you go, "What?" Yes. Because at its face, it sounds ridiculous. It's, we don't have time for strategy, basically, is what they're saying. It reminds me very much of, the old, there's that saying that when you walk, it's a tale that is told in business. The CFO walks into the CEO's office and says, "What happens if we invest in training and all these people end up leaving the company?" And then the CEO says, "Well, what if we don't invest and they stay?"
Yeah.
And, it's the same kind of thing when you hear we don't have time for strategic content. It's like, well, if we don't have time for strategic content, what kind of content do we actually have time for?
Well, that's what was in my mind. It was like, but you've got time for this shit.
Yeah, that's right. And so, interestingly, when I dug in a little bit, his complaint was actually reasonable. And what he was complaining about was the review process, right? This is the and usually when you hear review process at any company, when it comes to marketing and content, you sort of roll your eyes and you go, yeah, I got it. I know, I feel that pain. And what he was complaining about was the time that it took to go through this review process for more of their in-depth stuff. But honestly, all of it went through the similar sort of challenge, which was, a white paper, it goes to the content team and then they start writing on it. And then the product team would review what they wrote and they would add their content to it and change some stuff. Then the sales team would add their content and input to it. Then the brand group would get it and then they would review it, ensure it meant all the messaging guidelines and change it and add some stuff to it. Then legal and compliance would take a look, and legal and compliance looking at it, changing it, marking it up. And then finally the content team would get back and try and resolve all that stuff. And the whole process took about 8 weeks. Yes. And he said, that's just not tenable. Yes. And he's right. And so that's what he meant, was this kind of inefficient review process. It happens when we get, all these committees and everything and groups and different silos involved in creating this content. And all of a sudden you're putting, rock and roll quotes around strategic, right? Because you just can't afford to have that kind of thing. And one of the things that we talked about was sort of changing the idea of the review process, because what's happened, I found in many businesses, is that the quote unquote review process is really just the production process with a checking also included. In other words, we start writing our stuff and then it goes to another group to review. That doesn't mean they're reviewing. What that means is that they haven't had the ability to add in their 2 cents. Yeah. So they start creating too. So it's review conflated with production, conflated with creation. And what we're building is sort of, we're simultaneously building a house where everybody gets opinions on how many bedrooms it should have and what the design should look like and all that stuff. Yeah. And so if we can, and one of the things we're trying to do with this particular company is look at it and say, if we can add a planning stage in between the ideation and production stage where we add this planning and, whether it's an outline or whether it's an abstract or whether everybody gets in the room together and adds their input before it gets written, so that all that input is taken into account, and transform the review process literally into a, did you get it? Yeah. Then it goes much faster. And I've found that in some cases, it can actually double the speed by which we do things. But it means everybody's got to buy into that. It means that everybody's got to buy into the fact that, you aren't going to get the paragraph on what sales input into this white paper is. Yeah. You're going to have to trust that the content team or the writer of this paper is going to take your input into consideration and you're going to review it accordingly. And that's sort of what, it's a pain point I see common today.
Yeah. Well, also when you have that process, somebody was saying, described it on this podcast, I think, as Franken content, and you've got all these different voices within that content, and you can't. It was Misha Tramp last week. She was saying that you can't get an authentic voice through that, and she was railing against ghostwriting because she saw that you get a lot of substandard content because it's written in that kind of way, and then it's assigned to somebody else. But also, I really like what you described, and that. Had some experience this sort of thing too, but also just that agreement on what is the story that we're going to tell about this topic, and get an agreement on that and the research around that before you even think about what the asset is that you're going to produce.
It's such an incredibly important point. And the funny thing is that we these days, you hear you hear everybody say we should act more like media companies, and we should, operate more like media companies, and all of that. And what's missing from that is that what people hear there is that we should market ourselves like media companies. And that's not what is meant by operating more like a media company. What's meant is that what media companies do really well is that they understand that the planning of story, the architecture of story, the architecture of what it is that they're going to create is done in a separate process from then deciding what container that content's going to go into.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so it's really clear about what that story is, and what the outline is, and what, the consistency is, and who's authoring it, and how it's going to work, and all of that planning takes place. And then they go, great, it's a movie, it's a TV series, it's a, all of that kind of thing. Or it's all of the above, right? It's a TV series and a movie and a novel and, a website and all of the above. So that's the difference is that how we actually approach the what would, I guess, classically be called the product development methodology of content.
Yeah.
That's what we can learn from media companies, is how they actually develop content at scale.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that. I worked for a vendor that had a lot of publishers as clients, and they're not seen as the sexiest of clients to have, right? But what I thought as a content professional, and as we were selling content management, a content management product, is there's so much we could learn from the publishers. And exactly to your point about the way they think about content, the way they think about developing content, and the tools they use, and the way they go about that process, which is completely different to the way that marketers often think, which is they think of the tactic and they think of the channel, and then they work back from that and think about, well, what am I going to say in this white paper, on this channel, in this tweet right now?
And you know what the difference is? Is that the publishers, the media companies, look at content as the product.
Yes.
And marketers look at content as the fuel that can be burned off to get to a product.
Yeah.
And so when you hear that VP of marketing go, we don't have time for strategic content. In many cases, what they're actually saying, and this wasn't the case in this particular instance of the person I was talking to, but what they're actually saying is, all we're trying to do is burn off some rocket fuel here to get to a particular goal, and we can't afford to spend this much time on it. It's just costing us too much fuel to get to another goal, which is a lead or a customer or a subscriber or whatever it is. And the business is making some sort of rationalization to say, here's the amount of resources we can spend, the fuel we can burn in order to get to that goal.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you go, oh, well, okay, well then that means we can only create a product that is, put a level on it, but this good, right?
I think
versus that good.
Yeah, I mean, this point is great. Sorry, I interrupted you. In terms of how good does the content need to be in order to accomplish that? I mean, I've worked with marketers that really don't care. They're just looking for something to put in an email or put in their next nurture phase, and it needs to be decent. And then you've got other situations where you have people that are absolute subject matter experts that are really keen on the absolute detail of this ebook or white paper, and will not let it go unless it's absolutely perfect, like a thesaurus,
right?
Like their doctorate or something. How do you strike that balance?
It's a great question, because if you ask like the executive leadership, usually, or you ask a salesperson, or you ask, in some cases, the demand generation professional or whatever, they might tell you it needs to be, 1% better or 0.1% better than makes someone take the action that you want them to take.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In other words, it only needs to be good enough to actually meet the goal.
Yeah.
And the goal is to get somebody to raise their hand to talk to a sales guy, or to generate that form fill, or to generate that lead or that click or that download or whatever. It only needs to be just that good. And what they would tell you the balance is they would say, watch the action, right?
Yeah.
In other words, but of course, quality isn't measured like that. You can't, it's not like fuel.
Yeah.
You can't say, oh, I'm going to make this just good enough to make someone want to click.
Yeah.
What you're trying to do as a content creator is create something that's, differentiated and amazing and the best that it can be.
Yeah.
So that it meets that goal.
Yeah.
Because you don't know where that line can be drawn.
Absolutely.
Now, that doesn't mean the line can't be drawn, because, to your point, the opposite is also true in some cases, that we spend so much time in analysis paralysis over designing, overthinking, overwriting, over creating, overdone with a piece of content that it never gets out into the marketplace, and therefore we never, it's delayed and so expensive that it doesn't matter how many leads it creates, it was unprofitable for us to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that balance is hard. That's part of the art of what we're doing here, is that understanding how much is enough, how good is enough to create the action we want to create. But also not overblow ourselves with, analyzing or overthinking or over creating something to the point where, it's an art project.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's look, this is one of the core things we can learn from media companies.
Yeah.
A lot of people will say, you watch popular blockbusters, or you'll watch, TV shows that are hits and stuff like. I was just watching last night, the show, the reunion of the show Friends.
Yeah.
And I was fascinated with one of what the creators said, which was midway through the series, they would have, they ran for 10 seasons, and seasons 4, 5, 6, somewhere in there. What they would get is from the studio, they would get instructions to say, okay, you have to have what they called bottle episodes. And what bottle episodes were ways to manage the budget. You would basically, you would force the story into one room, or you would only have one setting, or, whatever it was to basically manage the production costs.
Yeah.
And so you would try and strategically write content that were in, that would only take place in the apartment, for example, which would manage the costs, substantially. And so you'd have to have a certain number of those to be able to manage your budget squarely, so that you could spend the really good amount of money that you wanted to spend on the big episodes, right?
Yeah.
And that, to me, is a fascinating thing as a media company tries to balance this. It's the same equation we have to make, which is which ones of these content are going to be our bottle episodes, where we just need to get the thing out in order to create some actions. But that affords us the ability to create this differentiated art, if you will, of really good stuff too.
That's perfect. And we've run well over time. It'll be a long episode.
Yeah, sorry about that. I get a little onto this topic.
I couldn't interrupt that one. That was perfect. Thank you very much. And also the Friends reunion, which we've got on record, which my wife's a huge fan of Friends. We look forward to watching that. But yeah, that bottle episode, that idea of mixing up the content that you produce and actually shipping and not analyzing everything to death is absolutely true.
Yeah.
So if as I've had to cut you off, whereabouts on the interwebs can people find you, my friend?
Well, these days, my little hovel on the internet is a little place we call contentadvisory.net. And then, of course, on the social dials, you can dial us up, Robert_Rose on the Twitter, and LinkedIn with one of those keyword-like searches.
Yes. And I will include all your links in the show notes. Thank you very much, my friend. And are you planning on living here for another week? Shall I see you next week?
I am. I'm up in the air conditioning duct, so I will swoop down on our next gathering and make us another cocktail.
I look forward to it. Thank you, mate. I'll see you then. Thank you, Robert. Very much enjoying his residency in our virtual bar. And I think we might have tapped into something there. Maybe a topic to return to on another show. So that's a wrap on episode 63 of the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast. Thanks again to Jeff, Christina, and Robert. I really appreciate their time. So please thank them by checking out the show notes, clicking their links, follow them, and take a look at their work. You can find the show notes at rockstarcmo.fm, where you can also find all our previous episodes. But most of all, thank you for dropping a dime into your podcasting jukebox, selecting our track, and jiving along with us. Does the world need another effing marketing podcast? Let me know what you think. Please leave a rating, review, or subscribe, or just keep listening. I'm glad you're here. Next week, Julie Ogilvy will be back. I'm looking forward to chatting to Richard Medcalf, a leadership strategist to top tech CEOs, and I think I'll find Robert Rose in our virtual Rockstar CMO bar. Until then, I've been your host, Ian Truscott, and I hope you join us next week here at Rockstar CMO FM.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Christy Heiler hosts a fantastic podcast called Own It. Christy, tell us more about the show.
Own It is all about celebrating women and non-binary advertising agency owners. We talk about buying out of the Boys Club of Advertising because less than 1% of ad agencies are owned by women.
And where can people subscribe?
You can find the podcast at untilyouownit.com. We're also on the Marketing Podcast Network at marketingpodcast.net. And of course, you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard her. Go subscribe. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.